Well, we saw overnight into Thursday morning that a tentative agreement between railroads and unions was reached to try and prevent a potential rail strike. Here to talk to us about it and discuss further, Mike Steenhoek, Executive Director of the Soy Transportation Coalition. Mike, great to have you back on the show. How are you, sir?
I am doing fine, Jesse. Good to be with you.
Thank you for the time. And we have been talking about this now for the last couple of weeks, and we were kind of getting down to the 11th hour here. But it sounds like this tentative deal reached overnight into Thursday morning is going to be able to stop this rail strike. Talk about what you have heard with this deal, because I know we're still getting a few of the facts and a few of the numbers out with this deal. But overall, what did you hear with what was put together?
Well, the two parties, and that's the nation's largest railroads and the railroad unions, and particularly there were three of them that still had not come to any kind of agreement with the railroads, and so negotiations were proceeding throughout the night. And so early morning there was an announcement that the remaining unions have arrived at a tentative agreement. The reason the word tentative is in there is that it still has to be ratified by the rank and file membership of the unions, which is very common. We obviously hope for that to occur. We'll be very attentive to that. We expect those votes to occur by the rank and file membership over the next several weeks. But I find it hard to believe that they would actually reject the tentative agreement. I expect that to be affirmed by the rank and file membership. And so there is this tentative agreement that most importantly is preventing this potential strike that could indeed occur starting at 12:01 Eastern time on this upcoming Friday, so less than 24 hours away. And had that caused rightfully a lot of concern for agriculture and for
Mhm.
basically every industry in the United States. Railroads, they transport so much of what Americans produce and consume, and particularly for agriculture, 30% of our exports are accommodated by rail. So it would have just had a real seismic impact on our industry, on our economy. Farmers cannot be profitable without a functioning rail system. So we were happy to see this tentative agreement that averted this potential strike. And now we just look forward to, proceeding with, farmers doing what they do best, and that is being the most cost effective, the highest quality provider of food on the planet.
Well, and Mike, just thinking about all of what we have seen and heard with this deal and getting it to come through, as you alluded to, it's massive for not only agriculture but our entire broader economy and supply chains. But I just think about us nearing harvest time, what this could have done here if a deal had not been reached. And like you said, rank and file members still have to agree to this, but all signs seem to point that they will. So hopefully we can put this potential black swan event behind us here in the ag trade.
Yeah, it's really important now. We obviously wish that we wouldn't have walked right up to this precipice. That's not a real effective way of running a country or running an industry. But we're happy that we've at least come to this tentative agreement. As you said, the more we get into harvest season, the more important it will be for our various modes of transportation, including rail, to be operational, actually improving service. This is against the backdrop of a supply chain that's overly constrained, that hasn't been firing on all cylinders. Rail service hasn't been what we expect it to be. So that's kind of the current lay of the land when it comes to supply chain. We therefore need our various modes of transportation, including rail, to actually improve service, not take a step back. And clearly, a slowdown or even a strike would have been a major step back on that. So, we've got the good news with our industry, within the soybean industry, is we've got very strong demand for what farmers produce. But, the fundamentals of it is not it's not just a function of having demand, and it's not just a function of having supply. You've got to have that connectivity between supply and demand, and that's what our freight rail system does. That's what our various modes of transportation system do. And there's particular states where our freight rail system is even more consequential. Some areas of the country, you have some proximity to the inland waterway system, like the Mississippi River or Ohio River. But there's other areas of the country that produce a significant amount of soybeans, corn, and other agricultural
Mhm.
products where your option is rail or it's rail. And so for those areas of the country, they were acutely interested in this issue and very appreciative that we've come to this tentative agreement.
Well, Mike, now that this tentative agreement is in place, as we look back at the past week or so that we've been worried about this strike, have you seen or do you see any potential impacts just coming from all of the talk the last week? I could think of one. I know soybean basis. Excuse me. I know soybean basis in the PNW, for instance, has dropped over 50 cents in the last week. So I'm wondering if there's some little impacts like that that you are maybe watching here in the broader scope of the ag industry, and even especially on the soybean side.
Yeah, we would have seen that whole farmer profitability, that basis widening, much more pronounced if we would have had a strike or a slowdown really extend longer. That really is just one of the realities that a lot of people, farmers understand this, but a lot of people more broadly don't understand that the price a farmer receives is so much influenced by how efficient or inefficient that transportation is after the delivery occurs. And so if you essentially, as a grain elevator or a rail shipper of agricultural products, if you're not able to move product out your back door, you're not going to accept product via your front door, because if you can't move product via rail, then you're going to be less willing to have farmers deliver to your facility. So what they do is you will drop the price that farmers that's offered to farmers. The basis will widen. So this is not just a kind of a hypothetical, theoretical kind of issue. When you talk about rail service disruptions, it's very practical. It has direct impact on farmer profitability at the very local level. So that's why it's such an important issue to us. That's why we're so engaged in it.
I know as well, before the rail strike really came to the forefront, you mentioned talking about just modes of transportation in general. Rail, of course, a big focus here today, but obviously truck drivers, et cetera, et cetera. Even before this, on the rail side, we heard a lot about Class 1 railroads and not being able to, provide service or slowing service. Do you think now that this tentative deal is in place, that maybe there's an opportunity for the railroads to work more, maybe with the administration to try and improve service and improve service wait times in some areas moving forward now?
Well, we certainly need that to occur. Having this agreement, in place will certainly allow that attention to turn to what's very necessary is how they can actually improve their service and better serve their customers. Because, even the railroads will admit that their service is not up to their own expectations. It's certainly not up to the expectations of rail customers. And so we clearly need to continue to make progress in this area. The railroads, they're aggressively trying to hire new employees and get them trained. They kind of are confronted with the same dilemma that so many other companies and industries are confronted with, and that is not having an adequate supply, a sufficient supply of workers. And this becomes all the more acute in various transportation fields and industries because of the nature of the work, where you can be away from home for an extended period of time. Sometimes you do get furloughed. Sometimes it's not predictable, and it can be quite uncertain what your schedule is. And so those are some of the things that they actually have to surmount as an industry. We certainly hope that they put all of their attention and their energy into that, because our industry really depends upon it.
Couldn't agree more. Mike, any other final thoughts, real quick, before we run out of time?
No, I think that covers it.
I think it did cover it very well. Also, I appreciate the time with that. Mike Steenhoek, Executive Director of the Soy Transportation Coalition. Thanks for joining us today. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Jesse.